On today's show, Summer League Game 1 in the books for the Cavs. They lost to the Pacers, but there were some good things. Plus, we will talk about what Kenny Atkinson had to say about Evan Mobley when he jumped on the broadcast. That's all straight ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that is code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. The Cleveland Cavaliers played a Summer League game yesterday against the Indiana Pacers, and they lost said Summer League game against the Indiana Pacers. They lost this one 116-115. They did hold a pretty big lead, and they were not able to hang on to it, which sounds like a story that we have seen before because the Cavs did that same thing a few times against the Indiana Pacers in the playoffs. Of course, this game does not nearly have the same meaning that those games had. There's a lot to talk about. I want to talk about what Jaylon Tyson did because I think he showed some really good things. I want to talk about a little bit what Tyrese Proctor was able to do. Nae'Qwan Tomlin, I thought, was very good. But I wanted to start today's show with what Kenny Atkinson said because Kenny went on the broadcast. Jared Greenberg and Greg Anthony were the broadcast duo for NBA TV, and Kenny Atkinson was on during the second quarter. And I do not believe that he has spoken publicly in some interview setting or anything since the Cavs were eliminated. I believe this is the first public appearance that he's made. Not to say like he's been hiding or anything, but like he just hasn't spoken to the media on the record. So it was interesting to hear what he had to say about everything and just being the first time we've heard from him in this setting. I do think it's a notable thing. And there were several things to take away from it. I mean, he started off talking and the guys sort of made fun of him a little bit because they just lost to the Pacers in the playoffs and the Pacers were the first Summer League team. He said, listen, we have to face the music in a way. They have to wake up with it. They have to live with it. They have to use it all summer long as motivation. And that's what they have to wear until they can get past that second round hump. That is the thing that they're going to be labeled as. They will be labeled as a team that cannot get past the second round until they do get past the second round. Now, I think that the chances they get past the second round next year are pretty good, but until it happens, that's how they're going to be viewed. So that was thing number one. But the biggest thing to come out of this was what he said about Evan Mobley. So he was asked about internal development and some of the outside additions, and we can talk about what he said about Lonzo Ball and stuff like that too. But he went to Evan Mobley, and Kenny does this thing. And it's interesting because if you listen to appearances from like guests on sports talk radio, there will be times where the guest wants to talk about something specific, and maybe the question isn't leading them that way. And I know this because I will do this when there is something that I feel very strongly about or something that I think maybe isn't being talked about enough. And I go on a show on 92.3 or in another station out of market. And I get asked a question. I just don't know that that's necessarily the thing hitting the point. I will direct myself to that point. And Kenny did this with Evan Mobley to an extent, because he did talk about that stuff. And he goes, listen, Evan Mobley needs to be somebody that, and then they did follow up and ask him about him. But Evan needs to be the guy that develops. Like, he needs to be the one that finds himself in the MVP conversation in the next 2 to 3 years. Now, he didn't do it to put as much pressure on Evan as say he needs to be an MVP candidate right now. And I'm not going to call him an MVP candidate this past season, although he did receive an MVP vote, which I do think is a very good step in the right direction. But I do think it's worth noting that those are the expectations for Evan Mobley when he hits his prime. Now, he's not in his prime yet. I think that, even 2 to 3 years from now, he still might not be in his prime. I think he will obviously be much closer, and I think he will be a much better basketball player at that point than he is currently. But I do think those are fair expectations. And I'm glad that the Cavs are not going to shy away from publicly expecting that out of Evan Mobley. Because for this roster, for this organization to get where they want to go to, Evan Mobley has to be the guy. I said it, and at the place I was working at the time, the day the Cavs traded for Donovan Mitchell, my take was, yeah, Donovan's a great player, and I think that he has been a better player in Cleveland than he was in Utah. Like, I just think that he has been better at basketball since he's been in Cleveland than he ever was in Utah. And I think he's even been better to a level that I didn't necessarily anticipate or expect that he could get to. But that trade was not a bet on Donovan Mitchell. That trade was a bet on Evan Mobley. The Cavs don't make that trade, in my opinion. And I've not asked Kobe Altman this. I've not asked really anybody organizationally this. But in my opinion, I don't think the Cavs make that specific trade at that specific time for that specific type of player without having a lot of confidence and faith that Evan Mobley is going to be somebody that gets to an MVP conversation level. I'm not even going to say gets to an MVP winning level, but somebody that is in the MVP conversation. Because we could debate and talk and, maybe we all feel a little bit differently about whether or not Donovan Mitchell can be the best player on a championship team. I think that there are debates that could be had. I think most people would probably lean no, but I do know there is no debate that Donovan Mitchell could absolutely 100% without question be the second best player in a championship team. And for Donovan Mitchell to be the second best player on a championship team, there is only one guy that the Cavs have on the roster right now, or in all likelihood, will have on the roster in the next several years that has the possibility of being better than Donovan Mitchell. Because if you look up and down the roster, I think Darius Garland's an awesome basketball player. And I think if you listen to the show, you know that I'm a believer in Darius Garland, maybe a little bit more than consensus. I don't think that he can be Donovan Mitchell type player. I do not think that he could be somebody that is a first team all NBA guy. I think he's probably a second or third team all NBA guy. I don't think he's somebody that's going to be a top 5 MVP finisher the way Donovan Mitchell was. Evan Mobley, on the other hand, I think all those things are possible. I do think that for the Cavs, their recipe for success is exactly what Kenny Atkinson said it was on this TV appearance on NBA TV. Because if Evan Mobley is in the MVP conversation, and maybe what defines the conversation is, I think, kind of subjective from year to year. But if he is somebody that we are talking about as, Evan finished 5th in MVP voting, or Evan finished 4th in MVP voting, he received a handful of second place votes, or maybe we get to a point where there is a wide open MVP year, not necessarily one like this one where all of the first place votes went to one of two guys between SGA and Nikola Jokic, but maybe there's a year where 4 or 5 guys get a first place MVP vote. I don't know if we will get to that point, because I do think a lot of the voter base does tend to, I think that we tend to make this a one or the other argument. And I don't know that they're necessarily with that specific award. I think it becomes typically a choice between 2 guys as opposed to 3, 4, 5. But if there is a year in the near future where it is a choice between 3, 4, 5, and Evan Mobley is getting first place MVP votes, I think then that qualifies as in the conversation. I think then what Kenny Atkinson is talking about is coming to fruition. And if that happens, the Cavs are going to be in a great spot. If the Cavs are in the finals next year, I don't know that we have to be having this exact conversation because of the state of the East, but 2-3 years from now, if the Cavs are in the finals or if the Cavs win a title, we're going to be talking about it because Evan Mobley was the best player. For him to be the best player with the bar that Donovan Mitchell has set on this team, he needs to be first team all NBA. He needs to be somebody that is in that MVP conversation. And I think my expectations for Evan's career changed during this season. I've always been somebody that's been high on him, but I think, get a little discouraged by what he had been offensively through his first 3 years. While the shooting was good, the volume wasn't there enough and his aggressiveness wasn't frequent enough. But now, after watching him in year number 4, I've gone from thinking Evan Mobley is probably going to be somebody that is, makes a couple second team All NBA, is a perennial All-Star, to now I'm of the belief Evan Mobley is going to make multiple first team All NBA appearances. He's going to be perennially at least a second team All NBA guy. You can pencil him in. His All-Star break is going to be spent at the All-Star game. He's not going to get that vacation every year that other guys are going to get in the middle of the season. That's what my expectations of Evan Mobley have changed to. And I think the Cavs, as evidenced by what Kenny Atkinson said on the NBA TV broadcast on Thursday, I think they agree with that sentiment. And listen, Evan, this offseason, and I know that there are videos out there, and I really don't like talking about offseason workout videos for guys because I just don't think they hold a ton of merit. But the fact that he is working clearly on tightening up his handle, which I personally think is the most important thing for his offensive game to get to the next level. If he becomes better at just dribbling the basketball in traffic and becomes more efficient with that dribble, I think it's going to take his offensive game to the next level. I think it's going to take the Cavs offense as a whole, which is already great, to the next level. Those are all things that need to happen. And Kenny Atkinson talked about being out at Evan Mobley's workouts over the last couple of days, or over the last week or so, for a couple of days. And just, I think that good things are come. And if Kenny Atkinson is willing to go on TV and say, hey, this guy needs to, not to put pressure on him, but this guy needs to be in the MVP conversation about somebody that just finished up their 4th year in the NBA, I think some pretty good days for that guy. And this team certainly are ahead. But there was actual basketball played. So we're going to talk about Jaylon Tyson. We're going to talk about Tyrese Proctor. We will talk about Craig Porter Jr.'s injury and, of course, Naquan Tomlin, because he got buckets. It's all straight ahead right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the very last minute that you want to head to a ball game with some friends or some family, or even, as I have done at times in the past, just yourself? Maybe there's a game today. There's not in Cleveland. They're on the road right now. But you want to be in the stands. You want to be checking out the action in person. You don't want to watch on TV. It's a beautiful day outside because we're finally, it seems, into the nice part of summer in Northeast Ohio. Well, that's where Game Time comes in, because they're the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without all the stress. Plus, with the money that you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite maybe a friend to come with you if you don't want to go alone. Game Time makes it all possible. I am going out to Las Vegas Summer League this weekend. Now, I have a credential. I don't need Game Time to get in the door. But if you are in Vegas, if you want to go check out Summer League basketball, maybe you're just dying to get a glimpse of Tyrese Proctor playing for the Cavs, Game Time is the way to get in the door. It's a great experience too, because you get in the door, you've got basketball all day. It's 2 different gyms that you can bounce between. It truly is an awesome experience. It's one of my favorite parts of the summer. And Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to your event. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, which I personally love, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That is LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off that first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And 3 Cavs that are on standard contracts with the team played in the first Summer League game, plus a guy on a 2-way, Naquan Tomlin. I wanted to talk about Jaylon Tyson to start here, because while I don't know if it's fair to say that he was the best player on the floor, he's the one that just, I think, is most likely on this Summer League roster to have an impact on the Cavs next year. And he finished the game 32 minutes, scored 20 points, handed out 12 of the 26 assists that the Cavs had, collected 4 rebounds, did so on 8 of 17 shooting, was 3 of 8 from deep, committed 7 personal fouls, which, just as a side note, you get 10 fouls before you foul out in Summer League, which is one of the more ridiculous and hilarious rules in the NBA, that you get that many fouls in Summer League games. Like Naquan Tomlin, who had 30 points, and he looked great. We will talk about where he might fit in a little bit. He had 9 fouls in this game. It is hilarious. The Cavs as a team committed 37 fouls, and I do think part of that is the referees are not standard NBA referees. They're referees certainly that are hoping to get to the NBA one day, but you're not seeing, like Tyler Ford, who fans certainly don't like, or Scott Foster. Like, you're not seeing the normal NBA refs out at summer league games. So that certainly is part of it. But in getting back to Tyson, I think that he's starting to do, so one of the other things actually where I want to start with this, one of the other things Kenny Atkinson talked about, and this again is the thing where he's asked one thing, but he really wants to talk about somebody else. So he was asked by the guys about who could potentially make the roster, or, some of the younger guys that are sort of out there fighting. And that is because the Cavs right now have 2 open roster spots technically, but really it's 1. I would be surprised if they go in the regular season with a full 15-man roster. Plus, they have an open 2-way because Naquan Tomlin is on a 2-way and Luke Travers is on the other 2-way. So he was asked, those spots are open, like, who is intriguing to you? Kind of wondering if he could maybe point to somebody else that is on this roster that is not necessarily part of the Cavs' future right now. And he immediately went to Jaylon Tyson. And what he said about Tyson, I think, is really good for his future, really good for, his potential. And he immediately went to, there are guys who really want to be NBA players, and then there are guys who are desperate for it. And Jaylon Tyson is somebody that is desperate for it. Now, if you've listened to Kenny Atkinson talk about Jaylon Tyson ever before, these are not like comments out of left field. It does seem as if anytime Tyson is brought up, Kenny talks about the work ethic that he has. And he is, as somebody who is at that practice facility for availabilities, whether it's shoot around or practices, Tyson is routinely one of the last guys in that facility. Even the other day after summer league practice, like, everyone was cleared out. We were sort of all in the media room and we were waiting on Lonzo Ball because he was a little bit late for his availability. And there's one guy left working out there, and it's Jaylon Tyson. And that is just it's a regular thing. It's a consistent thing. He's always putting the work in. He's one of the first guys in, which of course I'm not there when they get there, but I am there when they leave. And he's one of the last guys to leave. And that is a really, really good sign for him. Now, in the game, he had 20 points, which is fine. I think that the scoring is something that's going to be there. I like the way that he's able to get to the basket. I like the way that he is able to, find his spots. And I do think that he looks a little bit bigger. I think he looks stronger. I thought he played a little bit more of a physical brand of basketball on Thursday than what we are used to seeing from him. So I do think that that is obviously a good sign. And listen, if the Cavs want to transform his body into being a more physical athlete, given what we know about his work ethic, I don't think it should be crazy that, that works out, that he does put on strength, does put on weight, can become a more physical basketball player. So that's a good thing. The 12 assists, wow, that number, like that raw number, is awesome. And I think it is a bonus skill set for him. I just don't necessarily look at him as somebody that when he's in the regular season with the Cavs is going to have a usage percentage like that. Like, I just don't know that he's going to be somebody that is going to have the ball in his hands in decision-making positions for others or playmaking positions for others all that frequently, if and when he is in the rotation. But I do think the way I think about this is, can he be that Max Strus style connector? Like, think about when Kenny talks about Max Strus. He calls him one of the best connectors there is. And that's why he's in the starting lineup, because he bridges that gap so well between Mobley and Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Now, Strus is a little undersized. Tyson is certainly a little bit bigger than he is. But I do wonder if he can, while he's not going to bring the movement shooting that Strus does have as part of his game, like, Tyson's just not somebody that you're going to run off screens a ton. He's not somebody that defenses are going to chase around the way they have to chase around Max Strus. But I do wonder if that connectiveness that Strus brings to certain lineups for the Cavs is something that Tyson could do. And the other thing that I want to look for here, because especially with Craig Porter Jr. leaving this game with an injury, and Craig, I thought looked good in the 7 minutes he played. It looked to me like he injured his hamstring like 3 minutes into the game. If you go back and rewatch it, if you have it recorded, because of course you do, you're a Cavs sicko if you're 20 minutes into this podcast talking about Summer League, so you probably have the game recorded. But go back and look. There's a possession where the Cavs are on defense with like 7.5 minutes left in the first quarter. And you can kind of see Craig reach for his hamstring. And then he did play a couple more possessions, checked back out, went back in, played the rest of the first quarter, and then didn't play again. I thought he looked fine there, but his absence, I think, sort of put Tyson more in a position where he had to be a lead ball handler, a lead decision maker in a way that he would not have had to be with Craig Porter Jr. out there. So I would have liked to have seen him in a little bit more of an off-ball role, just because when he is playing for the real Cavs, when the regular season gets here, the role that he's in is not going to be what the role he was in on Thursday. So I do think it's great that he played well. Like, that is exactly what you would want. I just do think that having him with a little bit more ball handling is something that could be good for him in terms of getting used to the role that he's going to be in. Because if you think back to last Summer League, he did a lot of this stuff well. It's just that's not the role that he's going to be in. I do like, though, that he is competing for loose balls. He's going after rebounds, because I think that when you talk about Max Strus, another guy that comes to mind is Josh Hart. Is Jaylon Tyson going to be a bigger Josh Hart? I think that's possible. But if that's the case, the rebounding, which Tyson has shown to be good at, going after loose balls, scrappy defense, like all that stuff needs to be a significant part of his game. And I think there's a worry that when guys are in these bigger roles, the way that Tyson is in Summer League, that stuff is going to go away. And in watching this game, especially in the first half, I did not feel like that went away. I felt like Tyson had the right energy that he needs to play with in order to have the impact that the Cavs want him to have. So I think that was certainly a good sign. Well, Tyrese Proctor made his Cavs debut, plus Naquan Tomlin got a lot of buckets. We're going to talk about those two next right here, Locked on Cavs. Today's episode is brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, of taking pride in what you build, and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. And at Epicor, the All-Stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes is easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global visions, Epicor will equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most out of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier takes the lead. Discover your success at easierwithepicor.com. That is easierwithepicor.com. Naquan Tomlin, if we have learned anything about the guy, he can get buckets. He finished with a game-high 30 points against the Pacers on Thursday. He did so on 12 of 16 from the floor and 3 of 7 from three-point range. He did have 9 fouls, as I mentioned earlier, which just is hilarious. And Tomlin is somebody that I think you could make the case is the most intriguing player on this Cavs Summer League roster. So I say that because he's on a two-way, but he's also, and I'm sure you've heard this, like stop me if you've heard this before, he's such a late arriver to the game of basketball where he didn't start playing until he was 17 or 18. And it's not often that guys that pick up the game that late in life, and I know like 18 years old, not late in life, but by NBA standards, starting to play that game is late in life. The fact that he started basketball at that age and is at a level where he can go out there and just offensively look dominant, I think is a really, really intriguing thing. And I don't know right now if Naquan Tomlin is going to be an NBA player. I don't know if this stuff is going to be I don't know if it's going to translate to the NBA. I don't know if he's going to be able to do the stuff that he was able to do on Thursday in NBA games, like regular season NBA games. But I do think at the very least, this is a guy that's going to have a successful career in some respect, whether that's the NBA, whether that's the G League for a while, whether that is playing overseas in Europe. Like, it is hard for me to look at what Naquan Tomlin does and think anything other than that guy can go get buckets, because that is exactly what he can do. Again, I don't know if it translates to the NBA. I do know that I wouldn't be stunned if Naquan Tomlin is on the Cavs, like on a standard contract a year from now. Maybe he won't be. I don't know. But I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case, and maybe he's vying for rotational minutes. And for the Cavs to find ways to prolong this era, they're going to have to hit on somebody like that. That's why hitting on Craig Porter Jr. is important. That's why Dean Wade being good is important, because for the Cavs to be as great as they want to be, they have to win on the margins. They have to find guys that, whether they're the 49th overall pick like Tyrese Proctor, or an undrafted guy like Dean Wade or Craig Porter Jr. or Naquan Tomlin, or a first-round pick when you do have it like Jaylon Tyson, some of those have to pan out, because that's how you win on the margins. So maybe Naquan Tomlin will be a guy that helps the Cavs win on the margins. I don't know. I can't look at Thursday as anything other than a really good sign from him. I'll be very curious what he looks like the rest of Summer League. I'm excited to see him play on Saturday. I'm excited to see him play in person on Sunday, and then back again on Wednesday. And then, of course, did want to touch upon what Tyrese Proctor did on Thursday as well. So he finished his Summer League debut with 14 points on 5 of 13 shooting, but 3 of 7 from 3. The 3 of 7 from 3 number is the one to focus on. I think his shot looks really good. I think he's got excellent shooting form. I think there's a reason that he was a 40% shooter at Duke last year. I have very little concerns about that. I thought he played hard. I thought he did some good things defensively too. I don't think that he was perfect on that end of the floor, but he did have 2 steals, certainly a good thing, and only had 2 fouls. Like in a game where the Cavs had 4 guys, with 5 or more fouls, the fact that Proctor played 20 minutes, only had 2 fouls, I think is a good sign defensively that he was not out of position. I do think his handle might not quite be good enough. That is an area where I think he does need to improve. I don't think that he could necessarily right now be an on-ball guard. And that's not to say he can't be successful, because I do think that there are things like that shooting that you look at and say, yeah, this is a great off-ball skill to have. But I don't necessarily know that he's going to be able to blow by guys off the dribble. And that should be one of the things that is concerning. That said, the thing we are most certainly not going to do is we are not going to react to 28 minutes played in one Summer League game. That is not what we're going to do. That is not what we're about. That is not how Summer League works. Maybe he'll be great. Maybe he won't be great. I don't know. But all I do know is that this one Summer League game is not going to be the thing that determines whether or not he was great. And there have certainly been guys that have not had great Summer League starts. Like, for instance, the guy who went number 1 overall in the draft, Cooper Flagg, he made his Summer League debut on Thursday too. He had 10 points on 5 of 21 shooting. So he got the shots up. Wasn't all that great. So the moral of the story here, while I think there are things that Tyrese Proctor needs to improve upon, we're not going to overreact to every little thing that we didn't like either. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs today your first listen. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. And of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching on YouTube as we get out of here, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs. I'll be back on Monday talking more about Summer League.